The posting said, Night Security, American Dream Mall, East Rutherford, NJ. It was on indeed. I found it on a Tuesday at around 2 in the afternoon while eating cereal over my kitchen sink, which is pretty much the least dramatic origin story for anything that's ever happened to me. I'd been doing graveyard shifts for about 10 years by that point, data centers mostly. One private airfield out near Teterboro for about 8 months, the occasional warehouse gig in between. The work was the same everywhere. Walk a perimeter, check the doors, sit at a desk, and watch cameras show you nothing for 6 hours. Go home. I was good at it. Not because I had any particular skill set, but because I genuinely didn't mind the silence and I didn't need people around to feel okay. That's the whole job, honestly. You just have to not mind. The pay on this one was double what I usually made. Not like a little more. Double. I figured it was a big property, which it is, or maybe they were having trouble filling the slot, which turned out to be more accurate. I applied at 2:15 and had a call back by 4. I didn't think about it much beyond that. The interview was on a Thursday morning. I wore dark slacks and a collared shirt, which is what I wear to every interview. I don't own a suit. Never needed one. American Dream is out on Route 3 in East Rutherford, right next to MetLife Stadium. I'd driven past it 100 times on the way to other things. It's impossible to miss. It's this massive building with a multicolored paneled exterior that looks like someone designed it for a theme park and then just kept going. I'd never been inside. Most people I knew hadn't either, which is a weird thing to say about a mall that size, but the place had a reputation for being kind of a lot. Too big, too loud, too much going on at once. My sister went once and said it felt like being inside a fever dream. I didn't know what she meant at the time. I parked in a mostly empty lot near the main entrance and went in through the management doors on the west side. Like the email had said, a woman at a reception desk pointed me down a corridor without looking up from her computer. I followed the corridor past a service elevator and a bulletin board with a fire evacuation map pinned to it, and found the office at the end. The sign on the door said, Property Operations, S. Hansen. I knocked. He told me to come in. Shane Hansen was sitting behind a desk that had too much paper on it. He looked up when I came in and then looked back down at whatever he was reading. I sat in the chair across from him. The office was small and smelled like old coffee and something vaguely chemical, like industrial cleaner that hadn't fully aired out. There was a window behind him, but it faced an interior corridor, not outside, so the light was just fluorescent, bouncing off a beige wall. On the desk, there was a mug that said Atlantic City 2019 on it, and a stapler, and a framed photo I couldn't see from where I was sitting. He looked tired, not regular tired, the kind of tired that's been going on for a while. His eyes had that deep-set, hollowed-out quality where you can tell the person's been running on not enough sleep for long enough that it's starting to affect the shape of their face. His skin was kind of sallow. He was wearing a button-down that had been ironed at some point. Probably not recently. I've seen that look before on people who've been doing difficult jobs for too long without enough support. Night shift managers at data centers get it. ER nurses. People who know something's wrong with the system they're in and have made their peace with not fixing it. He picked up my resume, looked at it for maybe 4 seconds, and set it back down. ID, he said. I handed him my driver's license. He looked at it, wrote something on a notepad, and handed it back. That was it for the resume. He pulled open the bottom drawer of his desk and took out a key ring. Heavy, old-fashioned, with probably 20 keys on it in different sizes. Some of them were labeled with little plastic tags. He set it on the desk. Then he took out a mag stripe access card on a lanyard and set that next to it. Previous guard left, he said. No notice, need someone reliable. I nodded. You good with quiet? He asked. Yeah. Good. He pushed the keys and the card across the desk toward me. Hubs by Nickelodeon Universe. You know where that is? I said I could find it. Stay near there. Patrol when you need to. You'll figure out the layout." He picked up his pen and looked back at his notepad. "Don't ask questions you don't need answered." I picked up the keys and the lanyard. They were heavier than they looked. The key ring specifically had that solid mechanical weight to it, the kind that makes a real sound when you set it down. I looped the lanyard around my neck and put the key ring in my jacket pocket. "When do I start?" I asked. "Tonight," he said. 11. That was basically the whole interview. I was in and out in under 10 minutes. I sat in my car for a minute afterward, trying to figure out if I should be more concerned about how fast that had gone. I decided probably not. Some places are just understaffed and desperate, and they need a warm body with a clean background check. I'd taken jobs like that before. You show up, you do the work, you get paid. I figured this was one of those. I went home and slept until 8. I got there at 10:50. The parking lot was empty except for a few employee vehicles near the service entrance. The main lot was huge and dark, and the light poles cast these wide orange circles on the asphalt that didn't quite connect to each other. I sat in my car for a minute, eating the last of a granola bar I'd had in the glove compartment. Then I grabbed my bag and went in. The access card got me through the service door on the east side. I followed the signage through a back corridor that smelled like rubber and cleaning products, past a row of gray lockers and a break room with a vending machine humming to itself, and then through a set of double doors that opened into the main mall. I stopped. I'd been in a lot of big, empty buildings, warehouses, hangars, data centers the size of city blocks. I thought I had a decent sense of what large and quiet felt like. This was different. The mall was enormous. I knew that from the outside, but being inside it at 11 at night with no people in it was a different thing entirely. The ceilings went up maybe 5 or 6 stories in the main atrium, and there were these cascading levels of storefronts and walkways going up on both sides, all of it lit by emergency lighting that had been set to the lowest possible setting. Everything was dim and slightly orange tinted. The theme park section, Nickelodeon Universe, which took up a huge chunk of the interior, had all its ride lighting off, but there was enough ambient glow to make out the shapes. The roller coaster track curved overhead in the dark. The carousel was still. A massive orange SpongeBob statue stood near the entrance to the section with its arms out. And under that lighting, it looked less like a cartoon character and more like something you'd find in a field. The colors were the thing that got me. During the day, I'm sure it's all very bright and fun. At night, with the lights down, the yellows and greens and oranges all looked wrong, washed out and slightly off, like a photo that's been sitting in the sun too long. My sister had said fever dream, and I was starting to get it. I found the security hub without too much trouble. It was a desk and console setup in a recessed alcove near the Nickelodeon Universe entrance. Monitors, a keyboard, a radio charger, a rack of mag lights in various sizes plugged into their charging bases. The chair was one of those heavy-duty office chairs with adjustable arms. There was a small vanity mirror stuck to the wall to the left of the desk, the kind with the adhesive backing. No idea why it was there. I didn't think about it. I logged in, checked that the cameras were all pulling feeds, and started getting familiar with the layout. 48 cameras total, most of them working, a few with static or bad angles. Camera 12 was pointed directly at a support column, which seemed like a design flaw nobody had bothered to fix. I made a note of which cameras covered which sections and spent about 40 minutes just learning the grid. The mall made sounds, not loud ones. The HVAC was running somewhere, this low, constant hum. Occasionally something would tick or settle. Metal contracting in the cold, probably. The big snow ski slope was on the far north end of the property, and you could feel the cold coming from that direction if you stood still long enough. Just a slight drop in the ambient temperature, not uncomfortable, just there. I was doing fine. That's the honest answer. It was a big empty building, and it was quiet, and I was doing fine. At around midnight, I heard footsteps. They came from the direction of the food court, which was dark and gated off to my left. I looked up from the monitors. A man came out of the dark and walked toward the hub. Stocky, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded gray maintenance uniform with steel-toed boots. Maybe late 50s. He had coarse, gray-streaked hair and the kind of face that had been weathered by a lot of years of physical work. His hands were thick. He walked like someone who'd been walking the same floors for a long time and didn't need to look at them anymore. He didn't say hello. Didn't acknowledge me at all, really. He just walked up to the hub, reached into the chest pocket of his uniform, and pulled out a folded yellow legal pad. He set it on the desk in front of me. Then he turned around and walked back into the dark food court. I watched him go until I couldn't see him anymore. His footsteps faded. The HVAC kept humming. I looked at the legal pad. It was folded in half lengthwise, and when I opened it, there was a handwritten list in blue ballpoint pen. The handwriting was plain and even, the kind of writing you get from someone who learned it practically and never got fancy about it. 5 items, numbered. The first line at the top just said, "Rules." No name, no explanation, no date. I read through all 5. Don't look at the roller coaster if it moves without power. Offer a flashlight to any child near the water park entrance and walk away immediately. If a mirror shows an unfamiliar hallway, turn around and count to 60. Don't enter the candy store after 2 in the morning, no matter what you hear. If a reflection doesn't move in sync, find a windowless room and lock the door until 5. I read it twice. Then I folded it back up and put it in my breast pocket. My first thought was that it was a hazing thing. Bored maintenance staff messing with the new guy, seeing if he'd freak out or start looking over his shoulder all night. It's the kind of thing that happens on night shifts. People get creative when they're bored. I'd had a guy at the Teterboro airfield tell me the East Hangar was haunted by a pilot from the 40s. He was very committed to the bit, went on for weeks. This felt like that. Probably. I turned back to the monitors and kept watching. Around midnight, Hansen had mentioned the patrol route. Loose instructions, really. Hit the luxury wing first, then loop back through the theme park section, then the food court. Shouldn't take more than 40 minutes. He said it like it was a grocery run. I waited until 12:30 to start. The monitors looked fine. Nothing moving on any of them. I grabbed my flashlight off the charging rack, clipped my radio, and headed out. The luxury wing is on the north side of the mall. I'd passed through it on the way in, but hadn't really looked at it. During the day, I'm sure it's all marble and spotlights and people carrying bags with rope handles. At 12:30 in the morning, with nothing but the emergency lighting on, it was just a long corridor with a lot of glass and very clean floors. Saks Fifth Avenue on one end, a row of boutiques I didn't recognize on the other. The kind of stores where the clothes don't have price tags because if you need to ask, you're in the wrong place. That kind of wing. My footsteps were loud. That was the first thing I noticed. Everything else was completely dead quiet, so every step I took bounced off the floor and came right back at me. I slowed down a little, not for any real reason. It just felt wrong to be that loud in that much silence. The stores were all dark inside. I checked each one as I passed. Flashlight across the windows. Look for anything out of place. Move on. That's the job. Most of it is just confirming that nothing's wrong. You do it enough times and it gets automatic. I'd been doing it for 10 years and my brain kinda goes neutral during patrol. Not asleep, just quiet, waiting. I got about halfway down the corridor before I hit the boutique with the mirror. It was a big one. Floor to ceiling, maybe 8 feet wide, set right into the storefront display between 2 headless mannequins wearing things I couldn't name. The store was called something in French. I didn't catch the whole name. The mirror was framed in brass, or something that looked like brass, and it caught my flashlight beam and threw it back at me when I got close. I stopped, because I thought I saw something off in the reflection. I figured it was just the angle. Mirrors in empty malls do weird things at night. The geometry gets strange when there's nothing in the space to anchor it. I'd noticed that before at other properties. You see yourself coming from 3 directions at once, and for a second your brain has trouble sorting it out. But that wasn't what I was seeing. What I was seeing was a tunnel, not the corridor behind me, not the Saks entrance or the boutique across the way or any part of the mall. A tunnel. Narrow dirt walls, the kind of thing you'd see in a construction site or maybe an old mine. It went straight back into the mirror and then just stopped being visible because it got dark. Completely dark. The kind of dark where you can't tell if it ends 10 feet in or 10 miles in. I stood there for a second, just looking. Then the cold hit me. Not like the air conditioning kicking on. This was different. It came through the glass. That's the part I had trouble with. I could feel it on my face and on the front of my shirt, and it was moving, like air being pushed from somewhere deep in that tunnel toward the surface. Toward me. It smelled like dirt and something else I couldn't place. Old and damp and closed in. I took a step back. My hand went to my breast pocket before I'd really decided to do it. The folded paper was still there. I pulled it out and opened it and found Rule 3 without even having to look hard because I'd already read the thing twice. If a mirror shows an unfamiliar hallway, turn around and count to 60. That was it. That was the whole instruction. I turned my back to the mirror. I started counting under my breath. 1, 2, 3. I kept my eyes on the corridor ahead of me, the direction I'd come from. The mannequins in the next storefront window looked bad from this angle. I don't know why I noticed that. They just did. 4, 5, 6. The cold was still on my back. I could feel it. I kept counting. I didn't rush it. I've done long stretches of nothing on night shifts, waiting for a delivery window or a scheduled system reboot, and I know how to just be still and let time pass. It's not a skill most people bother developing. 17, 18, 19. Around 30, the cold started to ease off. By 45, it was mostly gone. I hit 60, said it out loud just to be sure, and turned around. The mirror showed the corridor, my reflection, the mannequins, the Saks entrance behind me, all of it exactly where it should be. The brass frame, the clean floor, nothing else. I stood there for another few seconds, just making sure it stayed that way. It did. I pocketed the list and kept moving. I didn't think about it too hard. That's not a thing I'm good at anyway, the extended analysis, sitting with something and turning it over. My brain doesn't work like that. It just logs things and moves on. The mirror showed something wrong. I did what the paper said. The mirror was fine. That was enough for now. The rest of the luxury wing was normal. I finished the loop and came back around toward the Nickelodeon Universe section. I heard it before I saw anything. A mechanical sound. Heavy, rhythmic. The kind of low industrial clatter that you feel in your chest a little before you actually hear it with your ears. I knew that sound. I'd worked enough facilities with heavy equipment to know exactly what a chain lift engaging sounds like. The slow drag of a heavy chain pulling something up a steep grade. The shell raiser is the big one. The orange coaster that goes up through the ceiling of the indoor theme park. I'd clocked it on my way through earlier. It was dark and still, and the main breakers for the park section were off. Hansen had mentioned that specifically, actually. Said the park systems ran on a separate panel and it was locked out at night. The chain was running. I stopped walking. I was maybe 30 feet from the coaster's loading area. I could hear the lift mechanism cycling up somewhere above me, behind the ceiling panels, the whole mechanical process of a roller coaster preparing to run a circuit. My hand went to my pocket again. Rule 1. Don't look at the roller coaster if it moves without power. I put my eyes on my boots. They're black. Standard issue. I've had them about 2 years. There's a scuff on the left toe from a loading dock door at a data center in Parsippany that caught me wrong about 6 months ago. I looked at that scuff and I did not look up. The coaster started moving. I could hear the cars, the clack of the wheels on the track, the whole train picking up speed, the rush of air displacement as something heavy moved fast through the space above me. And then the screaming started. It wasn't right. That's the only way I can put it. It was the shape of screaming, the pitch and volume of a full coaster car of people hitting a drop, but hollow, like the sound was coming from somewhere else and just being played through the air in front of me. Distorted at the edges, it went up and it went down and it echoed off the ceiling and the walls and the whole empty theme park, and it was very loud, and I kept looking at my boots, the scuff on the left toe. 2 years old, loading dock in Parsippany, the coaster ran its full circuit. I don't know exactly how long that takes. A minute, maybe a little more. The screaming went with it, up and down and around, and then it started slowing down the way coasters do at the end, the brakes catching, the whole thing decelerating, and then it stopped. Silence. I waited another 30 seconds before I looked up. The coaster was dark and still. No cars visible from where I was standing, just the track and the empty loading platform and the dim orange emergency lighting. I let out a breath. The list wasn't a hazing thing. I'd known that since the mirror, honestly. But this made it simple, 2 for 2. Whatever was on that paper, whoever wrote it, they knew this building. They knew it the way you only know something if you've been through it yourself. I turned back toward the hub. The paper in my pocket felt different than it had an hour ago. Not heavier exactly, just more specific. Back at the hub, I sat down and pulled up the camera grid. 16 feeds, most of them showing nothing. Dark corridors, empty storefronts, the food court with its chairs still up on the tables from whenever they'd last been cleaned. The Nickelodeon section was quiet. The coaster was where it was supposed to be. I checked it twice. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just looking. That's most of what security work is, honestly. You watch. You wait for something to be different from how it was 5 minutes ago. Usually nothing is. Usually you do 8 hours of that and go home. Camera 42 was in the bottom row of the grid, third from the left. I almost missed it. The feed was dark the way all of them were dark. Dim emergency lighting, everything washed out in that greenish gray the cameras do at night. But there was something at the water park entrance. Small, pale, standing completely still. I leaned forward. It was a kid. Small, maybe 7 or 8, hard to tell on the monitor. Wet swimsuit, just standing there at the entrance to DreamWorks Water Park, which had been closed and locked since I'd come on shift. The entrance gate was a big curved thing with a cartoon character painted on it, and the kid was just standing in front of it. Not moving, not looking around, not doing anything. Just there. The timestamp in the corner said 1:45. I sat with that for a second. A kid in a wet swimsuit at 1:45 in the morning in a locked, empty mall. Okay. I pulled the list out of my pocket. I'd folded it twice by now, and the crease was getting soft. Rule 2 was about a child near the water park entrance. Offer a flashlight. Walk away. Don't speak. I read it again to make sure I had it right. Offer a flashlight to any child near the water park entrance and walk away. That was the whole thing. No other instructions. No explanation of what the child was, or what would happen if I didn't do it, or what would happen if I did. Just the action. I looked back at the monitor. The kid hadn't moved. There was a charging rack on the side of the desk, 4 mag lights in it, all full charge. Standard issue, the big black aluminum ones, D-cell batteries. I grabbed one, clicked it on to check it, clicked it off. Heavy. Good weight. I stood up. The walk to the water park entrance was maybe 3 minutes from the hub. I'd passed it earlier on my first patrol, but hadn't gone in close, just noted the gate and kept moving. The corridor leading up to it was wider than most, designed to handle crowd flow, and it was completely empty now. My footsteps were loud. I slowed down a little without really deciding to. I could see the kid from about 30 feet out. The camera hadn't lied. Small, wet swimsuit, standing with both arms at their sides. Dark hair, flat against the head like they'd just come out of water. The entrance gate was behind them, padlocked. The cartoon character on the gate was grinning. I kept walking. Steady pace. I wasn't going to run, and I wasn't going to stop. At about 10 feet, I could see the kid wasn't moving at all. Not fidgeting, not shifting their weight, not doing any of the things kids do when they're standing still and trying not to. Just completely motionless. The wet swimsuit was dripping. I could hear it. Little drops hitting the tile floor. I stopped about 3 feet away. Close enough. I held the mag light out. Horizontal, grip toward them, lens toward me. Said nothing. For a second, nothing happened. Then the kid's arm came up. The hand reached out for the flashlight and I saw the fingers, and that's the part I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. There were too many joints. Not a lot too many. Just one extra per finger, maybe. Enough that the movement was wrong. The way the fingers bent to close around the handle was wrong. It was subtle. You'd almost miss it. I didn't miss it. The hand closed around the mag light. I turned around and walked back toward the hub. Same pace I'd come. Steady. I was looking at the corridor ahead of me, the dim lighting, the empty storefronts, a Pandora with the gate pulled down, a sneaker place, a pretzel kiosk with the metal shutter locked. I was counting my steps without meaning to. Just something to do with my brain. I was about 15 feet away when I heard it. The sound was sharp and sudden, like someone stepping on a hard-boiled egg. That specific kind of crack, the one that's both hollow and dense at the same time. The mag light collapsing. That's the only way I can describe what it sounded like. The whole aluminum casing just giving way at once. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. Pretzel kiosk. Pandora. The corridor curved slightly left, and then I was back in the main throughway and the hub was ahead of me, and I walked to it and sat down. My hands were fine, steady. I put them flat on the desk and looked at the camera grid. Camera 42 showed the water park entrance, empty. The gate with the cartoon character. The padlock. No kid, no mag light, no drips on the floor. Just the entrance, same as it had been before. I sat there for a minute. 3 for 3. That was the count now. The mirror, the coaster, the kid. I'd done what the list said each time, and each time I was still sitting at a desk and not folded into a locker somewhere, which, based on what Ellis had told me, was apparently the alternative. I checked the time on the monitor. 1:58, Rule 4 was the candy store. It's Sugar, down the east corridor, maybe a 4-minute walk from the hub. Do not enter after 2 in the morning, regardless of what is heard. That was the rule, regardless of what is heard. I'd noticed that phrasing when I first read it. Regardless of what is heard. Not regardless of what you see, not regardless of what happens. What is heard. Specific. 2 minutes. I pulled the list out again and read Rule 4 one more time. Just to have it fresh. Do not enter the candy store after 2 in the morning, regardless of what is heard. That was it. The whole rule. Don't go in. Whatever I heard, don't go in. I put the list back in my pocket. I put both hands flat on the desk in front of me where I could see them. I don't know why that felt important. It just did. Something about keeping everything accounted for. Both hands on the desk, both feet on the floor, eyes on the monitors. The timestamp hit 2 in the morning. I kept my hands on the desk and waited. The speakers crackled at 2:10. Not loud, just that static pop you get when something's about to come through, like when a PA system warms up before an announcement. I'd heard that sound 1,000 times in malls and airports and every other place that pipes audio through ceiling speakers. Normal sound, completely normal. I still felt my stomach drop. Then the voice came. Ronnie. I knew it immediately, didn't have to think about it, didn't have to process it. My brain just went, that's her. That's Mom. The way she said my name when she was looking for me in the house. 2 syllables, slight emphasis on the first one. The exact sound of it. My mother died 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I drove up to Hackensack every weekend those 6 weeks. I was there at the end. I know she's dead. I have never been confused about this. I kept my hands flat on the desk. Ronnie, come here. I have something for you. The voice was coming from the speaker mounted in the upper corner of the hub, the same one that had been cycling ambient mall music all night. Soft piano stuff. The kind of background noise designed to make you feel like nothing was wrong. That had cut out. Now it was just her voice. And it was filling the small room in a way that felt too big for the space. Like it was coming from every direction at once, even though I could see the one speaker it was coming from. I stared at the monitors. Camera feeds cycling. Empty corridors. Empty food court. Empty theme park. Everything dark and still. I got you something? Come on. The thing is, she sounded exactly right. Not like a recording. Not distorted or mechanical. The specific texture of her voice, the way she always made it sound like whatever she wanted you to do was actually a pretty good deal for you too. Come help me carry groceries. Come look at this. Come here. I got you something. She had a way of making it sound like a favor she was doing you. I knew what direction the candy store was. East corridor, past the closed-up pretzel stand, past the phone case kiosk with the locked metal gate pulled down. I'd walked past it on my first patrol. It's Sugar. Big pink sign. The kind of store that sells novelty candy in bulk and has a wall of gummies shaped like things they shouldn't be shaped like. I'd glanced in through the glass front when I passed it. Looked completely normal. Just a candy store. I did not move. Ronnie, I'm waiting. I picked a fixed point on the monitor bank and looked at it. Camera 12, the one covering the main entrance rotunda. Nothing there. Polished floor, dark skylights, a few planters with the kind of fake trees that malls use because real ones die. I focused on that and kept my breathing even. The voice shifted, not dramatically. Just a small change in the tone, like when someone realizes you're not going to do what they asked and they recalibrate. Why aren't you coming? I came all this way. That part was hard to sit through. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. Because she did used to say things like that. Not in a guilt trip way, just matter of fact. I drove an hour. I made this. I found this and thought of you. That was her. That was accurate. Whatever was in the speakers had gotten that right. I kept both hands on the desk. The voice tried a few more things. Told me she missed me. Told me she didn't have much time. Said my name again, the same way. And then again, slightly different. Like it was testing which version landed better. I watched camera 12. I watched camera 7, the one covering the west corridor. I watched camera 19, the one that showed the Nickelodeon universe perimeter, the roller coaster sitting dark and still on its track. Then the voice got mad. It happened gradually. The warmth dropped out of it first. Then it started repeating my name faster, less like she was calling me and more like she was saying it at me. Ronnie, 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 each one a little harder. I'd heard her frustrated before, obviously. She was a real person with a real temper when she needed it. But this wasn't that. This was something doing an impression of frustration and not quite getting the proportions right. Too much of it. Building too fast. You come here right now. I gripped the edge of the desk. Not white-knuckling it, just holding on. Something to press against. You come here right now and you look at what I brought you. I didn't say anything. I don't know if it could hear me or if talking back would have changed anything. I just didn't have anything to say to it. It wasn't her. I knew it wasn't her. Knowing that didn't make it easier to sit there, but it made it simple. Simple is something I can work with. The voice got louder, not a lot, but enough that I could feel it in the room differently. It stopped sounding like speech and started sounding like something that was using speech as a container for something else. The words were still words, but there was something underneath them that wasn't language. Then the words stopped. What came through the speaker after that wasn't a voice anymore. It was low, way lower than a speaker that size should have been able to produce. A vibration more than a sound, the kind of frequency you feel before you hear it. I felt it in my back teeth first. That specific pressure. Like when you're near a subwoofer at a concert, but worse, more focused. Then in my chest. Not painful, just present. Insistent. Like something pushing on me from the inside. I held the desk and I did not move. The hub felt smaller. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. The walls didn't move. Nothing changed. It just felt like the room had less space in it than it had a minute ago. The vibration was filling the air, and I was in the middle of it, and there was nowhere to move that would have been away from it. I looked at the clock on the monitor. 2:17. 7 minutes since the speakers cracked on. Felt longer, significantly longer. I kept my eyes on the clock and counted seconds for a while. Got to 40 and lost count and started over. Got to 60. The vibration didn't change. Got to 60 again. At some point it stopped. Not gradually. Just off. The speaker went quiet, and the ambient mall music came back. Soft piano, right where it left off. Like nothing had happened. The pressure in my teeth was gone. The room was the same size it always was. I sat there for a minute without moving. Then I let go of the desk. My hands had been gripping it harder than I thought. There were marks on my palms from the edge. I flexed my fingers a couple times and looked at the monitors. 4 rules. I'd cleared 4 of them. The mirror rule, the coaster rule, the kid at the water park, and now this. Whatever this was. 1 left. Rule 5. The reflection rule. If a reflection doesn't move in sync, find a windowless room and lock the door until 5 in the morning. I looked at the small mirror mounted on the hub wall, the one I'd been avoiding looking at directly for the past hour or so, if I'm honest. Just a basic rectangular mirror, the kind you'd find in any break room. My reflection looked back at me, moved when I moved, completely normal. I looked away. 3 hours left in the shift, roughly. 3 hours and whatever was in this building was still in it. Whatever had used her voice, whatever had made that sound, still somewhere out there in the dark past the monitors, still in the building with me. I put my hands back on the desk and watched the cameras cycle. The cameras cycled through their rotation, lobby, food court, the Nickelodeon section, dark and still, luxury wing, parking structure, back to lobby. I'd been watching them long enough that I knew the order by feel. Didn't even have to think about it anymore. My eyes just tracked the grid automatically, the way you stop reading road signs after you've driven the same route enough times. It was the hallway feed that caught me. Camera 17. The corridor just outside the hub, maybe 30 feet from where I was sitting. I knew that stretch of hallway. I'd walked it maybe 6 times tonight already. Polished floor, a row of overhead fixtures on dim emergency power, a fire extinguisher mounted on the left wall near the corner. Nothing in it. Nothing should have been in it. There was a figure standing in the middle of it. I leaned forward. The monitor was small, maybe 9 inches, and the resolution wasn't great, but I could see it clearly enough. Somebody standing there, facing the camera, not moving. Dark slacks, collared shirt, the same clothes I'd worn to the interview with Hansen. I looked down at my uniform. Dark jacket, the mall logo on the chest, security stitched above the pocket. I'd been wearing it since 11. The clothes from the interview were in a bag in my car. I looked back at the monitor. The figure was still there, still not moving, and I couldn't see the face clearly at that resolution, but something about the proportions was off. The mouth. It looked too wide, like the corners of it went further back than they should have. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, trying to decide if it was a camera artifact, some kind of distortion from the low-light compression. The camera did weird things sometimes in the dark sections, noise and grain and shapes that weren't really there. But it was there. I was pretty sure it was there. I thought about the list. Rule 5. The reflection rule. I hadn't looked at the hub mirror directly in a while. I'd been aware of it the whole time, that small rectangle on the wall off to my left. And I'd been keeping my eyes off it the way you keep your eyes off something you don't want to confirm. I turned my head slowly and looked at it. My reflection looked back at me. Normal. Me in the security jacket, the desk behind me, the monitor glow catching the side of my face. I shifted my weight in the chair. My reflection shifted. I raised my right hand a couple inches off the desk. My reflection raised its hand. Everything tracking fine. I exhaled. Then I stood up, just to be thorough, and stepped to the right, away from the desk, toward the edge of the hub space. My reflection didn't move. I stopped, looked at it. The reflection was still in the chair position, still sitting, arms on the desk, not standing, not shifted to the right, just sitting there looking forward like nothing had happened. I took another step to the right. The reflection stayed where it was. Then it moved, not to match me. It moved on its own, slowly, and it raised one hand and pressed it flat against the inside of the glass. Palm out, fingers spread, pushing toward me from the other side. I was already moving before I'd decided to move. That's the honest version of it. My body made the call and my brain caught up about 2 seconds later when I was already through the hub doorway and into the corridor. I ran. I'm not a runner. I don't do it for exercise. I don't have great form. And I was wearing work boots with rubber soles that weren't made for this. But I moved. Down the corridor, away from the hub, away from camera 17 and whatever was standing in front of it, away from the mirror. I took the first turn I recognized, a maintenance access hallway I'd clocked on my first patrol, narrower than the main corridors, no storefront windows, no display cases, no reflective surfaces. Just concrete block walls painted beige and a low ceiling with exposed conduit running along it. I knew there was a supply closet about halfway down. I'd seen it earlier, steel door, no window, deadbolt on the inside. Clifford had mentioned something about it when he'd walked me through the maintenance areas on my first night, something about the industrial cleaners being stored there. Nothing important. I'd filed it away without knowing why. I knew why now. I hit the door at a jog, grabbed the handle, pulled it open. Dark inside, the smell of floor cleaner and something chemical I couldn't name. I stepped in, got the door shut, and threw the deadbolt, both hands on it until I felt it seat fully. I stood there in the dark, breathing hard. The closet was maybe 8 by 10 feet. Metal shelving along 2 walls with big jugs of cleaner, mop heads in a bucket. A cart folded flat against the far wall. No window, no mirror, no reflective surface I could see. I found the light switch with my hand and clicked it. A single fluorescent tube buzzed on overhead. The room looked exactly like what it was. A closet full of cleaning supplies. I found a 5-gallon bucket on the bottom shelf, the heavy plastic industrial kind, and flipped it over and sat on it. Put my back against the shelving. Watched the door. For about 2 minutes, nothing happened. Then something hit the door. Not a knock. Not a knock at all. Full body weight, thrown against it. The door shook in the frame. The deadbolt held. It hit again. Same force, same spot. Like it was testing whether the same impact would eventually work. Then the voice started. My voice. My exact voice. Same pitch, same flat tone I hear on the rare occasion I get recorded and have to listen back to it, I don't love hearing my own voice. This was worse. Ronnie. It said my name once, then paused. There's something in the mall. You need to open the door. We need to get out of here. I put my hands over my ears. It kept going. I could still hear it, muffled but clear enough. It said there was danger. It said it had found a way out but needed my help. It said we were the same, and that made sense in a way I should think about. It was very calm about all of it, which was the part that got to me a little. Not frantic, not angry yet, just calm and reasonable and using my voice to do it. I sat on the bucket with my hands over my ears and stared at the deadbolt. After a while, the voice shifted. Still my voice, but the tone changed, less reasonable. It said I was making a mistake. It said I didn't understand what I was dealing with. It said some other things I didn't fully catch because I was pressing my palms harder against my ears and humming a little, which is something I apparently do under sufficient stress. I didn't know that about myself before tonight. Then the scratching started. Metal on metal. Something hard and narrow dragging across the outside of the door in long, slow strokes. Deep enough that I could feel it a little through the shelving behind me. A faint vibration. It wasn't fast. It wasn't frantic. It was patient, is the word. Like it was just marking time. Like it had nowhere else to be. I checked my watch. 3:42. 5 in the morning was the rule. That's what the list said. Find a windowless room and lock the door until 5 in the morning. Not 4:30. Not 4:55. 5. I had an hour and 18 minutes. The scratching continued. Long strokes, then a pause, then more. I kept my hands over my ears, but it didn't help much. The sound came through the door and through the walls and through the floor, and I just sat there on the bucket and watched the deadbolt and counted the minutes on my watch. I didn't open the door. I didn't say anything back to it. I just waited. The scratching stopped at 5 in the morning exactly. Not 5:01, not 4:59, 5. Like something had a watch and cared about being punctual. 1 second it was there, that long, slow drag across the metal, and then it just wasn't. The silence came in fast and total, the kind that feels loud after that much noise. I sat on the bucket and didn't move, didn't breathe loud. Just listened to the inside of the closet and the faint hum of the fluorescent tube above me and nothing else. Then the PA clicked on. Some soft rock song came through the speakers. Couldn't tell you which one. Something with acoustic guitar and a woman's voice, the kind of song they play in grocery stores at 9 in the morning, just floating down the hallway outside like it was any Tuesday, like nothing had been scraping the door for the last 90 minutes. I checked my watch. 5:02. I sat there for another 10 minutes anyway. The list said 5 in the morning. Not 5 in the morning if you feel like it. I figured the extra 10 minutes was just me being careful and not me being scared, but honestly, it was probably both. At 5:12, I stood up. My legs were stiff from the bucket and my back was doing something unpleasant. I picked up my flashlight off the shelf where I'd set it, clicked it on out of habit, and stood in front of the deadbolt. I threw it back and opened the door. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights, gray floor tile, a water fountain on the far wall. The ambient music was clearer out here, coming from the ceiling speakers, that same soft rock drifting through the whole corridor. Nothing in either direction. I looked down at the door. The outside face of it was gouged, not scratched, gouged. Deep parallel tracks, stripped all the way down to bare steel. The gray paint peeled back in long curls along the edges of each groove. There were a lot of them, clustered near the middle of the door, lower than I expected, like whatever made them was shorter than me or crouching. The marks were clean and deliberate looking, not frantic. Consistent depth, consistent spacing. Patient, like I said. The word kept coming back. I ran my thumb along the edge of one groove. The metal was cold and the edge was sharp enough that I pulled my hand back. Whatever made those marks was solid. That was the thing. That was the part that sat in my chest a little and stayed there. Not a sound, not a trick of the light, not me scaring myself in an empty building at 4 in the morning. Something solid had stood outside that door for an hour and a half and done that to the steel. I stood there looking at it for a minute. Then I turned around and walked back toward the hub. The mall was quiet and still the same way it had been all night. The theme park section looked a little less diseased in the early morning light that was starting to come through the skylights way up above, that flat gray pre-sunrise color. The Shellraiser was parked and still. The water park entrance was empty. Camera 42, when I got back to the monitors, showed nothing at all. Clifford Ellis was standing at the hub desk with a paper cup of coffee. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask where I'd been or what had happened, which told me he already had a general idea. He just looked at me for a second, then looked past me toward the hallway I'd come from, like he was checking whether the door was visible from here. It wasn't, but he looked anyway. "Last one tried to leave at 4, he said. He took a sip of his coffee. "Found him folded into a locker." I thought about that. The word folded was doing a lot of work in that sentence, and I decided not to pull on that thread. "Which locker?" I said. He looked at me. "Staff room, by the food court." I nodded. I didn't have a follow-up question. I wasn't sure what the follow-up question would even be. He finished his coffee, crumpled the cup, and dropped it in the bin beside the desk. Then he walked off toward the maintenance corridor the same way he always seemed to walk, like he had somewhere specific to be and wasn't in any hurry to get there. I sat at the desk for a few minutes, checked the monitors. Everything was where it was supposed to be. I filled out the incident log, which I kept brief. Unusual sounds in Corridor 7, duration approximately 90 minutes. Property appears secure. That was it. I'm not great at writing those. Then I went to find Shane Hansen's office. He was already there, which surprised me a little. It was barely past 5:30, and he looked like he'd been there for a while, like he maybe hadn't left. Same rumpled button-down, same dark circles, same posture of a man who had stopped expecting his day to improve. He was looking at something on his computer and didn't look up when I came in. "Bravo," he said. "I'll be back tonight," I said. "I need a raise." He was quiet for a second, still looking at his screen. "How much?" he said. I told him a number. It was a significant number. It was the number you quote when you've spent 90 minutes in a supply closet listening to something claw at a steel door while wearing your own face. He nodded once, didn't look up. "Next direct deposit." That was it. No negotiation, no pushback, no asking what had happened during the shift. Which told me he knew what happened during shifts. He just didn't want to talk about it, and that was fine. I didn't really want to talk about it either. I walked out, the service corridor, then the main entrance, then the big glass doors out to the parking lot. The morning air hit me, and it was cold and smelled like car exhaust and wet asphalt, and I stood there for a second and just breathed it. Normal air. Outside air. My car was one of maybe 3 in the lot, a gray Civic I'd had since 2017, parked under a light pole near the entrance. I started walking toward it. The sun was just coming up behind the buildings to the east, that low, flat light that makes everything look a little washed out. My shadow stretched out long in front of me across the asphalt, pointing west, thin and dark. I noticed it about halfway to my car. The shadow was lagging, not by much. A fraction of a second, maybe less. I'd stop walking, and it would stop a beat later. I'd turn my head, and the shadow's head would follow a half step behind. I stood still and watched it, and it caught up and went still too. But there was a delay in there, small and consistent. I looked at it for a few seconds. Then I kept walking. I got to my car and unlocked it and got in and sat there for a minute with my hands on the wheel. The shadow was gone now, just me in the interior of the car and the parking lot through the windshield. I'd made it through the shift. That was the first thing. All 5 rules, all one night, made it to 5 in the morning and walked out the front door. The previous guy had tried to leave at 4 and ended up folded into a locker in the staff room by the food court, and I didn't know exactly what that looked like and didn't intend to find out. I knew what the rules were for now. That was the second thing. I'd read them as a list of arbitrary instructions, the kind of thing you hand a new guy to mess with him, and then I'd spent a night learning what each one was actually protecting against. The mirror rule, the coaster rule, the kid at the water park, the candy store, the reflection rule, 5 problems, 5 solutions. Whoever wrote that list had figured them out the hard way, same as I just did, and had the basic decency to write it down. I'd be back tonight. I'd already said yes, already negotiated the rate, already understood what I was agreeing to. That was the third thing, and probably the most relevant one. I started the car and pulled out of the lot. The Civic's heater took a minute to kick in, and I drove the first few blocks cold, hands on the wheel, the mall shrinking in the rearview mirror behind me. Big and bright and completely still in the early morning, all those colors that looked wrong in the dark looking only slightly better in daylight. I merged onto Route 3 heading west and turned the radio on. Classic rock station out of Newark. Some song I half recognized. Guitars and drums. Nothing complicated. I had 9 hours before I needed to be back.